It starts quietly, not with a declaration, not with an argument, not with fireworks or farewell letters. It starts with a whisper that says, this is no longer me. At first, you doubt it. You shake it off. You smile when you want to scream. You nod when your soul is shaking its head. Because the idea of walking away from everything you once called home, even if it's killing you, feels like treason. But deep down, you already know. There's a version of you that existed only to keep the peace, to be palatable, to be liked, to be understood. And now, that version is dying. Not because you're angry, not because you're bitter, but because something in you has outgrown the cage it used to call safe. Outgrowing people isn't about superiority. It's about alignment. The person you're becoming no longer fits in the rooms where silence was survival, where shrinking was love, where your boundaries were negotiated for convenience. And you don't need to explain it, because real evolution never announces itself. It simply moves. And when you move from soul, from clarity, from deep-rooted conviction, the people who only knew how to love your dysfunction will feel it. They'll feel the shift, not because you said anything, but because you stopped apologizing. You stopped laughing at jokes that belittle you. You stopped dimming your light just to soothe their insecurities. You stopped being the emotional contortionist who bends just to be invited. They won't say it, but they'll sense it. Your freedom offends them, not because it's wrong, but because it reminds them of every place in their own life where they chose comfort over truth. Syphoria is the psychological rebirth that comes when the soul finally takes the wheel. And rebirth is messy, unapologetic, raw. It doesn't care about your schedule. It doesn't wait for your social circle to approve. It breaks through like a storm you didn't ask for and leaves behind clarity that no longer needs permission. Syphoria isn't the crisis. It's the collapse of everything falls. And when that collapse begins, people around you will panic. Not because you're breaking, but because you're breaking free. They'll say you've changed, that you're distant, that you've become too much or not enough. But what they're really saying is, I can't control you anymore. You've outgrown the dynamic where you carry the emotional weight of relationships built on imbalance, where you say yes to things that slowly kill you, where your silence is mistaken for agreement. No more. You're not angry. You're awake. Mindset is no longer a buzzword. It's your battlefield. Because the biggest war you'll ever fight is the one inside your head. The one between the you that they trained and the you that's trying to break out. And to win that war, you must get comfortable with discomfort. Because growth is uncomfortable. Because leaving people behind is painful. Because becoming someone they no longer recognize feels like grief and liberation colliding in your chest. But still, you rise. You shift. You recalibrate. You do the work in silence, and you let the results speak without volume. Because those who are truly evolving don't need to convince anyone, they just become. And becoming, by nature, creates distance, not out of bitterness, but because frequency does not lie. The deeper you go within, the quieter you become around those who live on the surface. Belief is the soil where you plant your future. Not beliefs handed to you. Not beliefs inherited from wounded ancestors. Not beliefs whispered by broken systems. Your beliefs, the ones you earn, the ones you carve from your own fire, the ones you prove not with words, but with the way you move. And as your beliefs shift, so will your reality. You'll start seeing differently. You'll stop chasing people who require a diluted version of you to stay. You'll stop proving yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. Because belief gives birth to clarity. And clarity is lethal to relationships built on confusion. You'll feel it in your bones when something no longer fits. And this time, you won't talk yourself out of it. You'll just walk, calmly, silently, with dignity. Because growth doesn't always require confrontation. Sometimes it just requires you to keep moving forward without flinching. Clarity sharpens you. It doesn't make you louder, it makes you cleaner. You don't argue when you're clear. You don't over-explain. You don't try to drag people with you who were never meant to go. You just embody the truth and let your energy do the talking. Some will be drawn closer. Some will drift away. Let both happen. Because clarity creates separation. It separates what's real from what's rehearsed. It separates mutual growth from emotional dependency. It separates those who celebrate your becoming from those who only tolerated your staying small. And you're done being tolerated. You weren't born to be digestible. You were born to be undeniable. Purpose doesn't arrive in a lightning strike. It reveals itself through subtraction. When the noise fades, when the pretending stops, when the people who drained your energy no longer have access to it, that's when you begin to feel it. A quiet pulse beneath the surface of everything you thought mattered. A steady rhythm calling you towards something deeper, not louder, but truer. Purpose doesn't ask you to become someone else. It demands you strip away everything you were never meant to carry. The roles, the personas, the borrowed beliefs and counterfeit dreams, until what's left is you, raw, unapologetic, and sovereign. And when you start living from that place, you become disruptive. Not because you're trying to be, but because presence built in purpose exposes everything around it that is false. People who benefited from your self-abandonment will feel it first. They'll flinch at your boundaries. They'll resist your clarity. They'll accuse you of being selfish when you finally choose yourself. But let them speak. Because nothing screams insecurity louder than someone offended by your healing. Discipline is your declaration of self-respect. It's not about restriction. It's about remembering what matters and acting like it matters. Every time you get up, when it would be easier to sleep, every time you say no, when your past would have said yes, every time you honor your own energy instead of giving it away for scraps of validation, you are reclaiming territory. Discipline is not for the externally motivated. It's for the internally convicted. And conviction doesn't shout, it walks with weight. That weight silences excuses. That weight clears the room. That weight creates space between you and people who only knew how to love you when you needed them. But now you don't need. You chose, and choosing is dangerous because it means you can walk away without looking back. Action is the bridge between your intention and your becoming. It's the space where the soul gets tested, where your vision is no longer a concept but a contract. Every time you move, even when you're uncertain, every time you create, even when no one is watching, every time you speak, even when your voice shakes, you are casting a vote for the future you refuse to abandon. And that kind of movement doesn't need an audience. It needs alignment, because when you are aligned, the applause becomes irrelevant and the noise becomes background and your power becomes quietly inevitable. This is how you outgrow people without saying a word. You keep choosing action over explanation, direction over distraction, embodiment over justification. You let your decisions build the distance. And one day, they look around and realize you're no longer walking beside them. You didn't run. You didn't shout. You simply rose. Gratitude becomes the compass. Not for what they gave you, but for what they showed you. Every betrayal showed you your worth. Every dismissal sharpened your direction. Every empty conversation clarified what you never tolerate again. You don't regret outgrowing them. You honor them and you release them. Because gratitude doesn't mean staying. It means seeing clearly without staying stuck. You thank the bridge for getting you across, then you stop living on it. You don't burn it with rage. You let it dissolve in clarity. Because real growth doesn't create enemies. It simply removes access. Resilience is not about staying in the fire. It's about becoming fire, unapologetic, focused, impossible to manipulate. You don't fold because someone else can't handle your evolution. You don't explain your silence. You don't overcompensate for your clarity. You let it be what it is and you walk with your head high. Because people who are threatened by your growth were never loyal to your truth, only to your comfort. And you no longer trade your peace for belonging. You no longer contort yourself to be loved. You no longer bleed quietly just to keep the room calm. You rise loudly by saying nothing. And your silence becomes revolution. Identity is not who you've been. It's who you choose to remain when everything false has fallen away. It is not fixed. It is not inherited. It is not static. It's a living, breathing contract with your soul, one that is rewritten every time you act in alignment with the truth that you no longer need to prove. When you let go of needing to be liked, you find peace. When you let go of needing to be understood, you find freedom. When you let go of needing to be anything other than real, you become untouchable. Not because nothing can reach you, but because nothing can distort you anymore. This is the silent power that shakes a room. Not the ego, not the performance, not the image, but the presence of someone who has made peace with themselves so completely that they no longer shrink for the comfort of others. You want to outgrow people without saying a word? Become so grounded in your becoming that explaining feels like regression. Become so rooted in your vision that validation feels irrelevant. Become so secure in your inner world that external noise becomes background music. Because when you finally meet a version of yourself who no longer negotiates identity for inclusion, you meet the one they can't predict, can't define, can't manipulate. That version of you, they don't explain anymore. They embody. You don't need to fight to be seen. You don't need to prove your evolution. You don't need to defend your distance. You are not distant, you are elevated. You are not cold, you are clear. You are not silent, you are sovereign. And those who can't reach you were never meant to walk with this version of you. Let them misunderstand. Let them gossip. Let them say, you've changed, and smile, because you did. You stopped rehearsing your worth in rooms that had no mirrors. You stopped showing up as the watered-down version of yourself just to be tolerated. You stopped sacrificing your peace for conversations that never deserved your presence. You didn't leave with noise. You didn't leave with a scene. You outgrew them in silence. Because real transformation doesn't beg to be witnessed. It moves without permission. Now you walk different. With weight, with rhythm, with a gravity that only those who've done the inner work can recognize. You don't chase energy, you attract with frequency. You don't seek answers, you carry clarity. You don't cling to love, you radiate wholeness. And as you continue rising, you realize this journey was never about losing people. It was about finding yourself so deeply that you could no longer stay small for anyone. It was about shedding the skin of performance. It was about choosing peace over proximity. It was about letting go of those who only knew how to hold the broken you. And now there's no need to say goodbye, because silence is louder than any closure they expected. Your presence speaks for itself now. It says, I love you, but I'm not shrinking for you. I wish you well, but I no longer bend to be understood. I'm still here, but I'm not the same. And that is how you outgrow people without ever saying a word.